Welcome to Are You Done Yet? The podcast brought to you by Innovative E, the 2023 and 2024 Microsoft Partner of the Year winner and a 7-time Microsoft Award winner in the last 6 years. Hosted by Mike Taylor, CEO of Innovative E, and Brian Quick, Senior Director of Business Development, this podcast is your go-to resource for transforming your organization's project and work management strategies. And now, Mike Taylor and Brian Quick.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Understanding Modernization on the Are You Done Yet podcast. Hey Mike Taylor, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brian. How you doing? And where are you these days?
I'm in the Chicagoland area visiting some family, but I couldn't miss an episode of Are You Done Yet? I'm really excited to talk about modernization concepts and benefits.
Yep, absolutely. Let's get to it, man.
So today we want to take a deep dive into the concept of what do we mean by project management modernization. Now, you've heard us talking in the last 2 podcasts about the evolution of project management, the history behind it, and sort of introducing the concept of modernization. But today we want to take a deep dive into modernization and talk about some customer stories that maybe you can relate to about how to modernize on the Microsoft platform.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. Yeah, this concept, you hear it thrown around a lot these days, right? People talk about modernization, app modernization, platform modernization. And of course, in our case, we're talking about project and work management modernization. But what does that really mean? I mean, you talk about, is it just buying another endpoint solution? Is it about buying another project management tool? What does it really mean, Brian?
Well, it doesn't mean that. That's for sure. So,
one thing is,
So if you're thinking about, I know how to modernize, I'm going to go and buy one of these task management solutions. Just hang on for a second. Let's get through this episode before you do that, before you swipe that credit card, because we've got some things we want to get through on why we think that's not the right answer. Buying another modern project management tool out there, they're a dime a dozen. There's billboards everywhere. There's commercials. If you watch some of our YouTube videos, you might have even seen a competing video come up. But basically what you're doing there is just you're adding another place for your data to go that's going to decentralize it from your overall platform for collaboration. And that's the Microsoft M365 platform. And you're going to segment out that data, right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're hitting on a core piece right there. I think, and we've said these stats before over and over again, the average organization has 5.7 project and work management tools. And it's too much. I mean, every time somebody comes up with something, they buy another endpoint solution, and they're really further segregating that data and the whole experience for the people who are using it. So when you have 5.7, let's round up to 6, right? Project and work management tools. If I'm working on something and I invite you into dayoftheweek.com to do that, then you have an experience, right? And you've got to kind of ramp up and understand the experience, and there's processes built around it. But you're also working in a siloed data area where if you're managing something in another, project management tool, and you invite me to come in, now I have to learn that one too. And so, and the data is segmented, the processes are segmented. Yes, you can use APIs to bring data together, but it's not necessarily all working out of the box. And maybe most importantly, and you say this a lot, these tools all add a collaboration feature into them, and collaboration by default is in that case is almost like an afterthought, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have collaboration in one of these tools to do good project management. But having that collaboration destination as part of one of these endpoint tools really is not ideal to your organization. Why? Because you're already collaborating in Microsoft Teams and you're already using the Microsoft platform to collaborate. So why would you try to draw people away from that? It's not going to work. They're going to continue to try to use Teams, and you're going to have you're going to have a bifurcated experience for these users. You're going to have a task being marked as done or updated according to the plan over in tool A, and then you're going to have the documents and the people collaborating over in Microsoft Teams. They're not going to get away from that. They're not going to use your tool instead in order to collaborate. There's just too much momentum behind it.
Right. Absolutely. Now, having said that, you don't necessarily need to go buy another tool doesn't mean you have to get rid of the tools you're using today, right? I mean, what we're really kind of promoting here is the concept of use what you have,
Right.
start to modernize, but instead of focusing on those endpoints, let's
Mhm.
focus on that consolidation point, that collaboration point. So you mentioned a minute ago, if you're in the O365, M365 environment, you're using Teams. You're using
Mhm.
Teams for your work management. You can, if you're not already, you can use that for your artifact management. You're
Mhm.
obviously like, doing your meetings and things like we're doing right now. And you're bringing all that collaboration together, and then, bring these tools together into that collaboration platform. And now there's a whole different dimension of the Microsoft platform that becomes really available to you, right? Now you have the
Yeah.
whole underpinnings of the Dataverse, the Power
Mhm.
Platform, Power
Mhm.
Automate, Power BI, and of course, all the AI tools that now are market leading AI tools that are built right into the productivity stack that we're talking about right here.
Absolutely. You covered a lot of bases there. So let's kind of take that apart, one
Okay.
area at a time. So you've got on the platform, on the Microsoft Teams platform, there's a capability of building out a project portfolio management solution right there in the platform. And we have a tool that we would turn you on to, Teams for PM, which basically does that already, and it's pre-created. And then we would just build on it from there. Why is that possible? It's because of this Microsoft Power Platform that's fundamentally part of your subscription already. And if you're not using it
Right.
today for Power BI or Power Automate for workflow or Power Apps to create custom app experiences, we can show you how to do that. And that's what the key is, to be able to light these things up in Microsoft 365, and to centralize it all in Microsoft Teams. You're going to use tools
Mm-hmm.
like the new planner. You're going to use tools like, if you got legacy tools like Project Online, we can put those in there. If you want to use just regular planner for task management, we can do that. But you kind of hit on it earlier, Mike. If you're using one of these other third-party tools already, that's okay. We'll bring those into the
Mm-hmm.
fold. So you don't have to wholesale cut over. We wouldn't ask you to do that. That's too disruptive.
Right. Yeah, you can continue to maintain the business processes that you have around your work management. Let people continue to manage in those endpoint solutions, the schedule, the task management, the pieces that you're doing there. Bring all the collaboration together into the Teams and the Microsoft Power Plat and the AI capabilities that you have there. And then, over time, you can look at it and say, okay, maybe we don't need all those applications, or we can consolidate, or we can bring things together. But we can also accommodate a lot of the third-party tools, the Monday.com, the Asans, the Reichs, all those things can also be brought in through this kind of methodology, or this kind of approach, of this optimization approach towards modernizing project and work management, right?
Right. Let's double click on the AI aspect that you talked about before, because that's, obviously a hot topic. So everybody's got AI, right? So when you're hearing that, you're saying, well, I don't need to be on the Microsoft platform for AI because my tool that I have, my third party tool that I have or thinking about buying, has some AI features. What's the difference between a tool with AI features and leveraging the platform that Microsoft provides for AI?
Wow, there's a whole lot you could dig into there. You're really getting into kind of the benefits of project modernization with this approach of moving into a collaborative environment with all the underpinnings of the AI capabilities built in. So
Right.
if you think about it, if you have a tool that does project task management execution, and it has some generative AI capabilities to do something like build a schedule for you, that's great for that tool. But if
For
you
that
have those
tool.
5.7 tools and you have multiple things across there, then you're only applying what AI can do across that. And maybe it can reason through a schedule and tell you ways to optimize. Maybe it can do some benefit analysis. There's all kinds of stuff these endpoints tools might be able to do, but you're not doing it holistically across the board. And by the way,
Right.
you're also probably not tying it holistically to things like organizational KPIs or OKRs or things like that, because you can't. You can only tie it to the things that it will support. And many of those tools do that, but they want you to buy the whole thing, right? They want you to do your everything from strategy to execution and collaboration and workflow and all that in their tool. And what we're
Right.
saying is most of that feature functionality is built into the Microsoft tool already, the tool set and the platform, including
Right.
AI. So now you also start talking about aggregation of data. So instead of moving into these different areas, all your collaboration and things are happening right there in the central point, and it's being done in a way people are already familiar with. They're already
Right.
using Teams. So there's things like a Teams Copilot, for those who haven't seen it. Copilot, of course, is Microsoft's solution, or it's one of their primary ways to address bringing AI to productivity. So there's Copilots for all the different Office apps. One that's really interesting in the world of project management is the Teams Copilot. You can do things like aggregating meeting minutes almost instantaneously, so you can find out, summarize the meeting for me. Basically, you can build a status report out of Copilot almost with just a few prompts, right? So it just works, and you're already in that space. Beyond that, what we've done is we've extended that even further to take like a transcript and be able to reason over that transcript and pull out risk and action items and put those into the appropriate registries, right? And in a governed information architecture fashion, so that you can then be able to, have it, everybody, it's all being done the same way. So it's not being done, it's these endpoint solutions, it's all being done the same way on the Microsoft platform. So that allows you to do AI at that level. Then there's another level of AI, which is, if you want to extend using Copilot or Azure AI or things like that, if you want to extend it, if you don't have the data centralized into the platform area, then you're trying to do it from those endpoints. By bringing everything together, now you're creating a common data set. So things like your metadata, right? We see that we have customers using that. And I know you want to talk about some customer stories, so I'll kind of give a teaser getting into that. We have customers who have multiple work management packages that they use, like Project Online and maybe Planner and maybe a third-party application. And there's metadata that ties around key performance of those things that it might be like, here's what the business case was, or here's what our financial indicators. And in some cases, they're set automatically through some kind of automation. In some cases, they're handled manually. Well, by aggregating all that together, you can then have it all in one place that all can be edited and maintained, and you can even apply things like AI against it because it's all in one aggregated data set. So you talk about AI, and you bring in AI to the collaboration space, which is where all the work's happening. So it really it creates this ability to bring things right out of the box, and virtually limitless extensibility, because of course, not only does Microsoft have a market leading productivity stack, but also all the things that are built in, the Azure Logic AI, Azure AI and Azure Logic, and the GPTs and the Copilot components that you can extend on through Copilot Studio and all those things is built right into the product. So customers and other partners can take and build off of this consolidated data set as well.
Which we have. And we've got solutions that are part of that, that are pre-built solutions that can get you started. But I like to think about the difference between using AI on the Microsoft platform and using AI like an AI widget that they've created in one of these third-party tools is like, it's like a meal versus an appetizer, right? So whatever they've built is what you get. And maybe they built a cool thing that's releasing at some point, or they're going to expand on that, or they're taking in some feedback and they're going to build it and they're going to release it. Well, if you want to do some really cool stuff with AI and have it so it's organizational AI, so your data is all consolidated on that platform, whether it's project management data or other data that's already on that platform, and expose AI to that and build some custom AI solutions beyond what we've been able to create as partners, or get a partner that can build an AI solution for you in the rich partner ecosystem that Microsoft has. I mean, the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want, right? So, and that's contextual to the rest of the data in your organization. And that's already secure using M365 through your secure cloud that Microsoft already provides, and that your IT department already provides as well.
Right, absolutely. And there's more stuff you could go into as benefits of the platform over time too. You talk about having the security all in one place by bringing the data into one secure platform. There's also the app overlap. So we talked about collaboration overlap. That happens a lot, right? So you've got collaboration happening in different spaces, but it's not just that it's happening in different spaces and can be disruptive to the way you're trying to manage work. And it's hard to bring that work together. It's hard to get a single source of truth of all the work that's going on across an enterprise because it's all disparate.
5.7 tools.
Working on all that. 5.7 tools. But it also makes it very difficult to the extensibility story, like we talked about. So I think it's really important to kind of think about it holistically around all those different pieces, because you hear it all the time. Data is the heartbeat of AI and automation, and so that's the first step, is to really get that going, and then really doing it in a way, and we keep hitting this point, but in a minimally disruptive way, because people are already
Right.
familiar with using the work management. If you're in the Teams ecosystem and using it, you're probably already doing a lot of that collaboration work and everything else. And there's one other piece. There's the payment piece, right? So you talk about collaboration happening in one piece. If you're buying these third-party tools, you're actually paying for collaboration, paying for document storage, you're paying for some form of work management.
Yeah.
You're already paying for that if you're on the 365 platform. It's all included. So
it's all included. Yeah. So there's definitely some cost savings opportunity there, or some if you can, before you make that kind of a decision, think about, am I double paying for all these other features?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And we talked about so the immediate value in adopting methodology strategies here. We've hit on some of those, right? I mean, it's about being able to apply AI, which we just kind of went into with a little bit of depth there. It's also about being able to do automation across the different things, and we talked about things like alignment of KPIs to things that are being managed in different execution tools. It's about being able to see and visualize all the work in one place, and be able to be more responsive and reactive to that. So you talk about things like strategic portfolio management. Well, that's all well and good. There's a lot of tools that do that, and they do it in one tool, though, in their tool. Right. So if you're really trying to do SPM across organizations, and for those who are, PMPs, or really understand a lot more of the strategic portfolio concept, it's really about being able to be more responsive to what's going on within your portfolio, and being able to align to those goals and those OKRs, or whatever it is, KPIs that you're tracking, and respond to it on a more frequent basis. Because a lot of organizations, they go through these annual planning cycles, right? So they line it all up, and they've got their $400 million worth of strategic initiatives, which are all projects, right? And it's some form, or portfolios of projects. And then they start executing against them. And it takes so long and it's so hard to get all that information gathered. And you don't have a real-time update on like this, how things are going and what's going on with each project and everything else, that you may not be able to react quickly to a change in that portfolio. So it becomes an annual or biannual kind of thing. The idea behind SPM and some of the other things that people are doing to try to become more real-time is to be able to manage those portfolios of projects as the business evolves throughout each year. So all those things are very important to customers, and being able to be more responsive and a higher performing organization.
True. So we've talked about the value of modernization, and we think that modernization is really a lot about picking a platform for project management and for project portfolio management, and bringing project management to the masses. And we already know where they are and where they're working. And it's about consolidating data on that platform and opening up the possibilities for AI. It's about coming to terms with the fact that you're going to have several tools in your organization, and what better place to bring everybody and consolidate those tools through integrations and through other experiences is through Teams. You're going to have a harder and harder time trying to get people to use tools that are outside of the wheelhouse where they're already working, where they're spending their day, and get them to move and context switch into something else. And the more that you offer those other technologies, alternatives, the more you're segmenting your data. So you're actually making a problem scenario where you have to actually go collect that data and then put it back together with other data in reporting. And that's going to be a largely manual process.
Which is the bane of project managers' existence, right? Chasing data to get real-time information that's accurate and actionable now.
Yeah. So the opportunity that we all have collectively is to realize that this platform provides a window to us to be able to bring these experiences, this data, these AI capabilities, possibilities into the platform. And that platform is not what it used to be. It's much more robust. It's the ability to build that out. It's the AI focus. I don't know about you, Mike, but instead of having one of these third-party tools thinking about AI and their dev team, I'd rather have Microsoft behind my company and thinking about how I'm going to leverage the Microsoft AI monster capabilities that they've created, the global capabilities of the largest software organization in the world, and basically focusing their entire workforce on artificial intelligence, according to Satya.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's really two elements of that, and we touched on this before. One is that those capabilities will become very robust at multiple levels, and there are multiple co-pilots and things like that, and Microsoft's working on strategies to bring that together. But there are a lot of opportunities to build native AI type things into solutions like our solution as well. But I think the bigger piece that's more interesting is Microsoft has always been a dev-centric company, right? I mean, they have they're probably the biggest set of tools for software development on the planet. Even a lot of the open source tools that Microsoft's making their stuff available. So it's really, it's really also about that extensibility piece. It's about that piece to be able to move forward. And they have made with Azure AI, GPT, and the Copilot Studios. And of course, Power Automate and Power Platform Studio and copilots that are built into that. They're making this extensibility built into the product as well. So it's not just about what you talk about those third-party products, and they build something that's really cool. It's AI. Well, they build it and they maintain it. And for every one of those that's built, even something that we build in our product, I think we can envision hundreds of other applications that customers may want to go do that are just to really help maximize their efficiency or whatever they're chasing. So it's that extensibility, I think, is unmatched.
Exactly. That's good. Well put. So let's talk about some real world examples. And while we're talking about these, think about your real world example. If you want to put it into the comments or just email us separately, let us know kind of your scenario. But let's talk about a few scenarios of customers that we've seen and how they're modernizing. So first, I'd like to talk about a large global consumer products organization that basically was using Project Server, Mike.
Yeah, they were. They had Project Server in the data center, if I recall, and they had a few challenges. They had been using Project Server since the early days of Project Server, I think all the way back to 2005 or something like that. And they had continued to automate and add reporting capabilities and extended it. They're a global, consumer product brand, set of brands, and so they had grown it throughout their organization, throughout the globe. And they ran into this challenge of they needed to get out of the data center. One, number two, they needed to upgrade it it was an earlier version that was going out of support of Project Server. And third, they had this notion, and I think through our conversations with them, they really kind of started to understand the possibilities of modernization beyond. So even though they had this product in place, the easy path to solve their immediate need would have been just to they could have virtualized that server and upgraded it in place to a newer version of Project Server. And that would have been fine and it would have worked. But they also realized they were not seeing all the benefits of that that existing Project Server implementation, or you could move it to Project Online. And but if you didn't think about a modernization strategy, you would still be hamstrung by some of the things that had been kind of part of their solution as far as problematic issues for a very long time. For instance, they were having a hard time getting people to adopt it, and it's oftentimes
they were having adoption issues. Yep.
Yeah. So they were, it's constant. You kind of constantly kind of be hammering on people to get the things, in the data updated and maintained and all that. So they also felt like they could do a better job of collaboration. So the team-centric collaboration approach was very interesting to them because they had recently moved to Teams. They saw the promise of that. They saw the promise of taking their legacy customizations, which were in ASP.NET or whatever, C# or whatever they were in, and moving those into the Power Platform, because that could then make those any changes to that, which happens, right, as business processes change and evolve. It makes them much faster with the low-code, pro-code solutions that are available with Power Automate. So that was another big win. And they I think they also really they were thinking a little bit about the future and AI, but they didn't really that was a little preliminary for them on that. But I think all of these things helped them kind of embrace the idea that they could invest in a modernization strategy rather than kind of a Band-Aid strategy of just doing an upgrade in place kind of thing.
Right. So just upgrading Project Server to the subscription version or moving it to Project Online was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't enough to really get that approved internally. We had to excite the user community. We had to excite the user base and give them something more of what they were looking for in terms of collaboration and adoption, usability, because just moving and upgrading that one tool wasn't going to cut it. We
Right.
helped them kind of realize that putting collaboration first and adopting a modernization strategy was going to be the thing that people loved and that people were looking forward to with this, especially executives that could finally have the reports they needed without a lot of manual work that was happening on the side of project managers. And the users were sort of, their adoption of Project Server was sort of waning. They no longer leveraged the tool readily. It was kind of getting old for them. But yet their entire research and development business is based on that tool. So you can't just throw it
Right.
away. We need to help them evolve. So let's talk about kind of what it looked like when we actually started painting this picture with them and kind of where they ended up today.
Right, right. Yeah, so it's a good point. So there were several pieces they were looking at in their internal business case to get sign off on. It was more expensive to do a modernization than just a upgrade in place kind of thing, right? So
Right.
probably by a factor of 3, 4, 5 times. But they really wanted to get better user adoption of the traditional PPM community and better ways to use the modern technologies that were there. They also wanted to embrace a larger community set. So the
Mm-hmm.
lower, they had a stated objective that the PPM solution was too much for folks who were not core IT and core project
Mm-hmm.
kind of work. The rest of the organization, information workers, they wanted them to participate and have access to tools that could help them do that kind of casual project management. I think is actually the
Mm-hmm.
way they stated it, which is a tool we've heard Microsoft and others use as well. And so they were chasing that as well. And so when we did this upgrade for them, and we moved them into the cloud, and we redid a lot of their customizations on the Power Platform. They actually liked what happened as far as the Power Platform customizations better than their legacy ones, and they have made some changes over the last year or two. They also went through some big organizational changes that were very good for them in the marketplace, and having everything on the modern tool that was unanticipated when we went into the original modernization approach. But because they were doing all these changes and moving things around, departments and everything around, it was easier to do because they were on the modern tool. So there's not as much baked into the legacy code set that required a lot of redo, right? So it was easy to move things around, move people around, move solutions around. So all of those things really helped them do that. And then I think you had talked to them, and I think one or two additional departments did kind of pick up on the idea. We want to go do some stuff that's outside of the kind of traditional PPM space. So we want to use the lighter weight tools. We want to use Teams and the collaboration capabilities, but we also want to use, I think they turned to what was Project for the Web now has been moved into, brought together in Planner with premium features, right? So that department went in a different way, but it's still encompassed under the full project and work management solution. So now you have full visibility into all that and everything else, right?
Right, exactly. So what it looks like today is we did move them from Project Server to Project Online. It was kind of an interim step. And then we took it from there on a fast follow with a modernization approach. So what we did was we developed some customizations in Power Platform that they needed. And now everybody accesses Project through Teams. So whether it's in Project Online or, as you said, Project for the Web, it's all accessed through Teams. And that's important because that's bringing the collaboration space. They have Teams channels for each project, and each one of those channels has different data on there, different tabs for different data, risks, issues, and the project schedule coming from Project Online or coming from Project for the Web, depending on how it's managed. And you mentioned that not everybody wants to use core Microsoft Project, which syncs with Project Online. So what about the new casual project managers? Well, that's exactly what Project for the Web is for. And now they've renamed that as Planner with premium features. So what we do is we take these Microsoft tools and we create a solution that's team centric. So now everybody can use that, and it's improved adoption tremendously because now everybody can just go to Teams in order to get these things done. There's no more barriers to entry for those casual project managers. They can start up a project, spin it up, and get that going, no problem. So we have this data set now that encompasses multiple different ways of managing projects. And it's all that data is maintained in Teams and these Power Platform interfaces that we created. And it's all
Mm-hmm.
consolidated in one set of dashboards and portfolios, regardless of how that project is managed. And that helped them kind of, with that modern approach, that more collaborative approach, really amplify the results of these projects, make sure that people are participating readily. And as you said, now that they're going through all these transitions, it's offered a way that anyone in the organization can manage projects and get things done, including on those transitional activities.
Right. Absolutely. So we have a couple other customers we could talk maybe a few points about. One I think we can mention because there's a public case study. It was on the Microsoft website. I don't know if it's still there or not, but Southern New Hampshire University, SNU, and we've been working with them for quite a number of years, and they consumed our product to help with this modernization approach. They started out with just Project Online, but then they started looking at Project for the Web. So it was a similar type approach, and I think one of the big benefits they got early on out of that was the automation of site creation for like Project Online and the ability to tie all the work together. Again, they're using what is now Project with Planner with premium features and Project Online together, and they're able to really get a lot more out of that solution through a lot of the automation and bringing things together. And I think they did a lot of intake too, right? They had a pretty robust intake, process. When we talk about extensibility, they actually really customized that intake workflow because they had a bunch of stuff that they needed to do from approvals and create visibility across departments. So it was really a big win for them as well in that regard, right?
That's right. So that the ability to create a custom workflow in Power Automate and be able to bring in project ideas from different departments and then kind of choose which tool is the right one for them. They started with just Project Online, and then they added Project for the Web. And now they can choose like, okay, so is this kind of a lightweight project or is this a heavier project? Which tool is right for me? And then we also integrate with Planner. And then we talked about these third-party tools. Maybe you want to execute the project in one of those. It's just a nice way of taking in that project work into a common funnel, putting it through these enterprise-grade workflow solutions like Power Automate that we're able to configure for project management, and then linking it up with the other tools so that your data is all consolidated in that platform. So I've been working with Southern New Hampshire University for a while, and we continue to get their feedback and sort of expand what we put together for them. And we work with them on a daily basis to just keep going and keep improving that process.
Yep, absolutely. I want to bring up one other customer that we have that's actually not a project management per se customer. They're doing work management, quite a bit of work management, but GMG and ViraSafe, we've been working with those for quite a few years. It's a little bit different take, but it's a very similar theme, right? It's still about modernization.
It is, because we're taking the full capabilities of the platform, Power Platform, and custom development on that platform and AI. And we're really we're taking these business processes that were internal or even customer facing, and we're completely re-engineering them, refactoring them with the modern platform.
Yeah, and so early wins for them is when we helped them move into the Microsoft platform, moved them onto Azure, moved them into, like you said, the modern platform. There's components of it, very much like we were talking about with with project and work management. There's components of it that are still working with the legacy apps. Because it would have been probably years to refactor all that. It's been going on for many years. They're customer facing apps and things like that. But what we were able to do is continue to maintain those, but maintain them on the modern platforms and move them into Azure. So now you have it in the Microsoft Secure Cloud. So you have a much deeper set of security constraints and protocols around it than if it was hosted in a data center on some server somewhere. So it's much more robust from that perspective, and that helps them with their customers, put their customers at ease that it's a very robust, secure platform to work from. And then beyond that, like you said, new functionality. Anything is all looked through the lens of what can we do with Power Platform and AI. We've actually extended a lot of stuff with AI with those guys too, using Azure AI and looking at some of the Copilot Studio capabilities to bring real value to their customers. So things, and they're a very creative customer. They they know their customers and their business very well. So when they have an idea of something that can be done with automation or AI, they'll bring it up immediately, and it's a lot of fun to see them be able to take those capabilities, and we help bring them to light, and their customers benefit and they benefit. So it actually creates top line and bottom line results to their business, and their their customers are getting a lot out of it. So it's a very similar story to what we're talking about in our project management modernization, because what we're really doing is making sure that the platform is empowered and optimized for their capabilities. The real difference is we don't use our Teams for PM product because it's not a project management thing per se, but the rest of the stack, the Microsoft stack, we're using the same core technologies.
Yeah, and it's a great story, and one that we're going to continue to keep in touch with on this podcast and evolve. We might even have some folks on as guests at some point to talk about that a little bit further. But it's important to just kind of, when you think about, like, I want to modernize, but I don't have these capabilities, these skills in-house, this team of developers that's going to help me leverage the Power Platform. There are folks out there like Innovative E that can help you in that respect and can align with you and continue to evolve that. We think it's going to become very, very common that organizations of any size are going to have a Power Platform capability internal to their organization. And because these resources are going to be plentiful, it's very hot platform topic. There's going to be a lot of people with those skill sets. They're going to be very common skill sets, but we can help you now to leverage the platform and to fill in those blanks, and to keep an ongoing, like what we're doing with that particular customer, GMG and VirusAce. We're very tightly aligned with them, and we're creating new capabilities, new functions, new value all the time through that alignment. It doesn't have to be a projectized effort.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, since you mentioned it, one of the ways that our go-to-market, Innovative E's go-to-market with our customers to help them, really comes down to a four-step approach, right? We look at modernization, or moving forward with what a customer needs to do in four basic kind of phases, if you will. So it really starts with the plan phase, where we can come in and assess where you are and what's the best way to get you modernized, and help you develop a plan to do that initial modernization, and then look at beyond getting on platform and getting those components in place to build for your future, to build a foundation for your future. Do you have some immediate needs to do? And we call those value point projects. So do you need to build an intake, or do you need to repurpose an application to do XYZ for your customers? Or we have some customers who are going through modernizations where they're moving off legacy SharePoint into the cloud, and we're helping them inventory hundreds of productivity apps that have come up and figure out how they need to how they need to really move forward. So this planning and assessing and planning phase is kind of the first piece of that, right? And then we move into a build phase, where you actually get these things done, you get this modernization in place, you tackle some of these value points, and then you kind of curate this backlog of items, whether it's us or them or other partners, how they want to go about continuing. Because we talked about that global consumer products company, their solution had stagnated a little bit, because they'd kept on a path of not modernized, but actually continuing to enhance it. But it got to a point where I don't think there was maybe as continuous focus on it to make it all it could be, and do all the things that you need to do to continuously bring value. So with an application or an enterprise solution, if it's not growing, it's dying, right? I mean, it's
right.
There's no homostasis there. I mean, not for very long. It's okay to build something and let it sit for a while, make sure everybody understands it before you add more functionality to it. But if you're not always looking at what's next to continue to grow the value to the organization and respond to business changes and compliance and regulatory and all the things that happen that you have to respond, market conditions, all the things that you have to respond to in building these strategic initiatives and with your modern platform for your applications, then you're not continuing to move forward. So building that roadmap is really important. Then the third phase that we have is really these this sustainment and curating to build towards the future. And in many cases, people use that as a bridge for a while to make sure that they've got the application and the adoption up and those kind of things, and then start working on future phases. And then the last phase is really kind of for certain organizations that are committed to an ongoing kind of team to help them develop and build to the future. Then we have that phase that's really more of an application lifecycle management phase, right?
Right. So if you're in an organization that it sounds like that's the way you want to work with a partner, give us a call, drop us a line. Mike, let's talk a little bit about your book. Do you have a copy you can hold up real quick?
I do. I have a copy right here.
Okay, so the AI Project Management Revolution is here. Take a look at it on Amazon. It's available at paperback, Kindle, or audiobook. A lot of the concepts that we talked about today are in that book, and it's a great read. It's not that long, right, Mike? A couple of mornings walking the dog.
70.
You'd be all right.
Yeah, about an hour and a half on audiobook.
All right. Yeah. So check it out. Also, want to start getting this podcast to be a little bit more participatory. So if you have a comment or you have a question or a scenario that you'd like to bring up, go ahead and put that in the comments, and we'll take a look at it, and we'll keep that up to date there, and we'll want to maybe bring some of those things into the show.
Right. Yeah. Make sure you catch up on previous episodes. Brian mentioned this is episode 3 of what we're calling season 2 now. We actually have done many other episodes over the past couple of years. So they're out there. Some of the same concepts we're always modernizing, right? Bringing up the latest and greatest. But then also make sure you tune in for our next episode, which is we're going to talk a little bit about a radical shift in project management. So that should be a lot of fun as well.
A radical shift, huh? Yeah. That's exciting.
Radical shift. Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. And just a quick reminder, as always, please remember to like and subscribe to the Are You Done Yet podcast. We love our subscribers, and we'd love to hear from you. So like us, subscribe us, share it with your friends. And that'll be all for today's Are You Done Yet podcast. Stay tuned for episode 4 of Modernization, coming soon to a podcast near you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, Mike. Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Are You Done Yet? Remember to like and subscribe, and check out the show notes for links to Mike's book. Leave us a comment or share your thoughts on today's topic. We value your insights and look forward to sparking a conversation about the future of project management. Join us next time as Mike and Brian discuss how centralizing project management in Microsoft Teams, integrated with the Power Platform and AI, can streamline collaboration and data management, driving a radical shift in how projects are managed.